Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something huge, something that, well, really forms the bedrock of the global economy, but honestly, it's often completely misunderstood. We're talking about the family-owned firm. Now, when you picture one, maybe you think, I don't know, traditional, but maybe a bit old-fashioned, driven more by history than market hustle.
Right, that's the common picture. But, if you actually look at how they perform, that stereotype just completely falls apart. The research we're looking at today, it paints a very different picture. These firms are often powerhouses of resilience, long-term thinking, and yeah, superior profitability. They don't just hang on, they genuinely outperform.
Okay, outperform. So there's a mechanism here we need to understand. This deep dive, it's part of our ESCP TrendTalks series from ESCP Business School. And we're drawing on some really insightful analysis featured on their platform, The Choice. Specifically from Professor Béatrice Collin. She's Professor of Strategy and International Management at ESCP.
That's right. Her work, it's titled From Legacy to Leadership: How Family Firms Outperform by Combining Heritage with Innovation. And that's really our goal today.
Yeah.
To unpack how they do it. What's that core advantage? What are the strategies, maybe the management choices, the governance that lets them balance that heritage with, staying innovative and relevant?
Let's start with just how big a deal these firms are, because the scale, frankly, it's kind of the first shock in the data. You think global power, you probably think multinationals, right?
Exactly. But family firms, they are, and this is not an exaggeration, the true backbone. The numbers are just staggering. They generate nearly 70% of global GDP. Think about that. And employ 60% of the entire global workforce.
60%.
And in specific markets, like France, for example, it's even more concentrated. 2/3 of all businesses are family firms. They're absolutely foundational.
Foundational, yet they still have that image, don't they? Conservative, maybe slow to change. But you mentioned this performance paradox. They consistently beat non-family rivals. How? Why would a company built on tradition outperform one supposedly engineered for, quarterly returns and hyper-efficiency?
It really comes down to one core thing: the time horizon. That's the key difference. The research shows, again and again, they do better on profitability, they last longer, and crucially, they handle crises better. Why? Because they're built to endure.
Not just until the next earnings call.
Precisely. They're thinking about the next generation, maybe the great-grandchild. That completely different set of incentives, it changes basically every decision they make.
Okay, so if they're not chasing Wall Street's short-term demands, how do they stay relevant? How do they innovate? It feels like that long-term view and, say, disruptive innovation might clash.
Well, they manage it through what Professor Collin calls innovation with purpose. It's just a different flavor of innovation. It's generally not the Silicon Valley moonshot model, betting everything on some unproven radical disruption.
So less about maybe blowing things up and starting again, and more about constant improvement, discipline, incremental steps, refining what they already do well.
Exactly that. Pragmatic is a good word for it. They're deeply connected to their market realities, their core skills. And this is where that time horizon really matters again. Family companies, on average, actually invest more in R&D than their non-family counterparts.
More. That seems counterintuitive if they're seen as conservative.
Right, but think about why. For them, R&D isn't just a cost you cut when profits dip for a couple of quarters. It's viewed more like a fundamental investment, almost an insurance policy for the next decade, for that continuity.
That reframing is critical. The R&D budget isn't just a line item. It's protected by the family's long-term vision.
Absolutely. Take Hermès, for instance, founded way back in 1837. Their core products haven't radically changed, but they are constantly refreshing them. They invest heavily in things like cutting-edge, sustainable workshops. They ensure the quality is always top-notch. So they're protecting the heritage by investing in the future capability to deliver it. It's quite smart.
And I suppose that long-term view, that focus on reputation, it naturally leads towards more responsible practices too.
It really seems to. Those family values, things like ethics, quality, being a good steward, they're not just, words on a plaque in the lobby. There's a significant finding here. 62% of family firms apparently put sustainability right at the core of their strategy.
62%. And compared to non-family firms?
It's much higher, only about 45% for non-family firms. So when you're building something intended to last for generations, well, your social and environmental impact, it just carries more weight than maybe a temporary boost to the balance sheet.
Does that patient approach also shape how they go global? I'm guessing it's less about aggressive takeovers to quickly grab market share.
Yeah, generally that's true. Their international strategy tends to be built more on patience, finding the right cultural fit. There's data from IFERA, that's the International Family Enterprise Research Academy, showing 75% of family firms, when they expand abroad, they prefer durable alliances, long-term partnerships over just quick acquisitions.
So seeking partners who align, not just targets to absorb.
Exactly. It guarantees more long-term commitment, fits better with their own culture. Look at the SEB group. They own brands most people know, like Tefal, Moulin X, founded in 1857. They've grown internationally, but very deliberately, step by step.
Through acquisitions, but chosen carefully.
Very carefully. Like buying WMF in Germany back in 2016. They look for companies that really fit their identity, their areas of expertise. They grow, yes, but without losing that core company soul, if you like.
Which I imagine loops back to resilience. That kind of deliberate growth and commitment must give them structural advantages when things get tough.
Enormous advantages, especially when the market hits a rough patch.
We definitely saw that during the pandemic, didn't we? But hang on, if they're sometimes seen as a bit risk-averse, maybe holding on to cash, shouldn't they be quicker to panic and cut costs, slash jobs? Why were they so stable?
It's because that stability, it wasn't just a financial choice, it was embedded in their commitment to their people and communities. The data on this is really striking. During COVID, family firms proved much more resilient. They laid off half as many employees as non-family competitors.
Half as many. Wow. That sends a powerful message internally, surely.
It absolutely does. And that stability breeds incredible loyalty. Think about it. Their deep roots in the community, those long-standing supplier relationships, higher employee engagement, it all creates this inherent shock absorption. In France, for instance, the numbers show employee turnover in family firms is about 30% lower than the national average.
30% lower. So when staff know the company has their back in tough times, they're likely more committed and productive when times are good.
That's the idea. It builds a really strong reciprocal bond. And governance is key here too, right? Because the leaders are often family, directly involved day to day. That means a potentially much more streamlined command structure.
Right, less bureaucracy perhaps.
Yes. When a big crisis hits, they often don't have to wade through layers of board committees, maybe driven by external shareholders worried about the next quarter. They can often make faster decisions, ones that are more human-centered, because the leadership is concentrated and consistent. And this blend of agility and commitment, it pays off financially too.
How so?
Well, over a 10-year period, listed family companies outperformed their non-family peers by 27%.
27%. So that consistency, that commitment, it's not just nice to have, it's actually a bankable asset.
Absolutely. The market seems to recognize and reward that reliability. They trust that what they're getting today will likely be the same reliable quality tomorrow.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating for me. Because this family factor, this engine of long-term success, it's also inherently fragile, isn't it? It sounds like a double-edged sword. Professor Collin uses Carlock and Ward's 4 C's framework here, which I think really helps lay it out, showing both the strengths and, crucially, the potential weaknesses.
That's a great way to put it. These 4 C's, they are continuity, command, community, and confidence. And we really need to see each one not just as a plus point, but as a kind of permanent tension point that needs careful management.
Right. Let's break them down. First C, continuity. This is their defining strength, isn't it? Playing the long game. You mentioned the investment horizon 7 to 15 years, and they often reinvest, what, up to 70% of their profits? Truly building for legacy.
Exactly. But the flip side, the massive vulnerability here is succession. It's the Achilles heel. Something like 70% of family firms don't make it past the founder or into the second generation. 70.
That's huge. Why is it so hard?
Well, it's complex. And a staggering 43% apparently don't even have a clear succession plan in place. It's not just about business capability. It's deeply emotional. It's family dynamics, personal ambitions, maybe entitlement, clashing with actual professional skill and the needs of the business.
So what's the fix? The antidote?
Rigorous preparation is key. Things like making sure the next generation gets solid experience outside the family business first, and having those really tough, candid conversations early on, focusing on skills and suitability, not just the family name.
Okay, second C, command. This is about that agile leadership we talked about. The strength is speed, right? Concentrated ownership means faster, more consistent decisions. Cutting through red tape.
Yes, but that very concentration of power carries a big risk, creating an echo chamber. You risk insularity, maybe even drifting towards autocracy, and a real lack of diverse perspectives. If it's only the founder's vision or the family's ingrained view, the company can end up missing market shifts, just kind of sleepwalking towards irrelevance.
But hold on, if that speed is their advantage, doesn't bringing in outsiders like independent directors or non-family executives, doesn't that dilute the very thing that makes them strong?
That is precisely the tension, the balancing act. But good hybrid governance, mixing family oversight with independent voices and external management expertise, it doesn't have to sacrifice speed. What it does is professionalize the decision-making. It injects objectivity, market reality into what could otherwise become a very closed conversation.
And does it actually work in practice?
The evidence suggests it really does. Firms that manage to implement effective hybrid governance structures see a significant boost, around 25% improvement in operational performance. That's a massive payoff for perhaps sharing a bit of that control.
95%. Okay. Third C, community. This is about those human ties, low turnover, high engagement, those strong local roots. This fuels the stability in crises we discussed.
Definitely a core strength. But again, there's a potential downside. That internal focus, that strong family feel, it can make the firm seem too inward-looking from the outside. They can really struggle sometimes to attract top-tier external talent. Potential hires might worry it's a closed shop, that they can never really reach the highest levels unless they share the family name.
So how do they counteract that? Avoid becoming stagnant?
They need conscious effort towards open innovation, things like actively partnering with startups, making diverse external hires a priority, building genuinely inclusive practices. It's about constantly refreshing their perspective, bringing in outside ideas to avoid that organizational stagnation.
Right, staying open. And the final C, confidence. This feels like their biggest intangible asset, that trust, built up sometimes over generations, the family name backing a product for a century. That must create incredible customer loyalty.
It's huge, almost unbreakable sometimes, but trust is incredibly fragile. It's perhaps their greatest strength right up until the moment something goes wrong. A major family feud spills out publicly. A lack of transparency on a key issue.
And suddenly that century of trust evaporates.
Exactly. It can be lost in a single news cycle. So protecting this confidence capital is paramount. It requires really strong internal communication, structured ways to make decisions, clear mechanisms for resolving conflicts before they explode. It's about professionalizing those crucial personal relationships at the heart of the company.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what's the big takeaway here for you listening, whether you're in a family firm, a startup, or even a huge corporation?
I think the core message is that these family businesses, they're far from being just quaint relics of the past. They actually offer a pretty compelling blueprint for a different kind of economic model, maybe a more responsible, sustainable one that proves you can reconcile high performance with, well, responsibility, and balance continuity with necessary innovation.
It shows you don't necessarily have to choose between profit and purpose, or short-term gains and long-term vision.
Precisely. Their ongoing challenge, of course, is maintaining that unique human-centric culture while putting in place the stronger governance needed to protect their legacy from those internal risks, especially around succession.
So the final thought, the challenge perhaps for you, the listener.
Yeah, it's maybe to reflect on how those core principles, that long-term investment horizon, that patience, that focus on responsible ethics, the hallmarks of these successful family firms, how could those apply in your context, in your own strategic thinking and decision-making? How often are you or is your organization truly focused beyond the next quarter, looking at a really sustainable, maybe 10 or 15-year horizon?
That is a powerful question to ponder. If you want to explore Professor Collin's analysis further and delve more into responsible leadership, you can find her work on the Choice by ESCP Business School platform.
Definitely worth checking out. And please join us again next time for another deep dive, exploring the strategies and choices shaping our future.